Welcome to the meeting of the Monomoy Regional School Committee for Thursday, June 11th. We are now starting at 6:30, right on the nose. Before we start, we have a new member tonight that we would like to welcome, and that's Lucia Quinn. And welcome, Lucia. And if you want to just please start off, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, boy.
Putting you on the spot, baptism by fire. Then we'll have you sing the fight song, too.
So I've been quasi-retired for about 3 years and moved to the Cape full-time to a home that we'd owned for 20-some years. I've done strategic planning, business development, managed P&L for divisions for Boston Scientific, Westinghouse Electric, Allied Signal, Honeywell, Quest Diagnostics, Forrester Research, and 2 PE-backed startups. One was a spin-off of Bristol Myers Squibb. So, and then at the very end of my career, CEOs started to look for executives to take over HR who were not HR people. And once that started, that's what I kept getting recruited for. So.
Okay. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
And,
good to be here. I'm sorry I missed the last meeting.
That's okay. And again, welcome to all the new members, and here we go. First item is approval of the meeting minutes of May 28th. Is there a motion to accept them?
So moved.
We hear a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? Say
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All those who abstain? Wish you would abstain. Okay, so we have 7 approved, 1 abstain. Okay, next order is for public comment. Do we have anybody here? We have some people here, but not necessary for public comment. All right, we will move right along. The first item up here is staff shout out for recognitions for this past year. Enjoy.
Excuse me. Hello. Joy Jordan, Community Engagement Coordinator for the district. With the end of the school year coming up, I just wanted to take a minute and give you all an overview of the new staff shout out program that we introduced this year. Let's see if my little... Michael, are you going to back me up? Oh, whoops. Okay. So as you know, well, as the long-term members know, and for the new members' information, last year we did a staff survey that covered a lot of different aspects of how they were feeling about the district, how they felt about their jobs, and one of the items that came out pretty clear is that they didn't quite feel like they were getting enough recognition. You know, we have things like Teacher Appreciation Week and some individual recognition days, but we wanted to find a way to recognize everybody on a more regular basis throughout the year. So we developed a staff shout-out program that's done on a monthly basis. We have an online form that's makes it really simple for people to submit nominations. We opened it up to everybody in the school community, so people could nominate colleagues, students could nominate their teachers or staff in their buildings, families could nominate people that they interacted with, community members could nominate people, so we really got a wide range of folks participating in the program. We set it on a very regular schedule, so a new honoree was recognized at the first week of every month for the month prior, and we would do a nice presentation. We'd have a bunch of the administrative team members, the superintendent, usually the principal of the building, all present the award as a surprise to the person who was getting recognized that month. We did it in a bunch of different ways. Sometimes we would do it in the cafeteria, for example, for one of our custodians who spent a lot of time with the students in the cafeteria. They got really excited and cheered. Sometimes we would do it in the classroom in front of students. It just kind of depended on who that honoree was and what made sense, but we tried to make it fun and celebratory so they felt really special. Sorry, this is going really fast. I did a little bit of number crunching just because I thought it was interesting. Throughout this whole year, we had 119 total nominations submitted, which I thought was pretty good for the first year that we did it. You can see the breakdown by building, and you can see the breakdown by the different roles that were nominated. Clearly, our teachers are very beloved, and the bulk of the nominations were for them, but it was nice to see it spread out among a lot of the other kind of roles in the buildings. So for this year, and we are kind of leaving open the possibility of shifting it to make things a little bit more equitable. For this year, we did just a straight up, the person who had the most nominations that month was the honoree. Some times that resulted in a concerted effort, recognizing a person which we loved, but it meant that not all buildings were recognized equally, and so we want to just look at ways to maybe make that a little more balanced next year. We also sent the list of everybody who was nominated, not just the honoree, to each of the building principals, and they all recognized those folks in their building, either at a staff meeting, sometimes in bulletin boards in the staff lounge. They were able to acknowledge all of the people that had gotten a shout out. And then we also made sure that anybody who was nominated, not just the person who was kind of officially recognized, was sent an email with the text of the nomination so that they knew that somebody was saying nice things about them, because I think everybody likes to hear nice things about them. So I'm just going to go really quickly through the honorees. We did invite everybody to come be officially recognized by you folks. It's a busy time of year, so we do have one who will be at the very end of the list here, and I'll point that out then. But in September, we had Jessica Friedman, who's a science teacher at the high school, Jack Dunford, who is a custodian at Harwich Elementary School, Amanda Griswold, an instructional assistant at Chatham Elementary, Wyatt Sullivan, a grade 7 teacher at the middle school, Michelle Davis, an instructional assistant at the middle school, Grace Galloway, an instructional assistant at HES, Stephanie Coles, a special education teacher at the middle school, Christina Lorero, who is our IT tech that covers both of our elementary schools, and Gregory Clancy, our social study teacher at the middle school. So he's here. I don't know if everybody would like to give him a round of applause because he gets to take it all in. So we appreciate you being here, and we wanted to make sure you got a little extra recognition. And so it was just really nice to see that so many people engaged in this program and that people took the time to submit a nomination. It was an easy form, but it still meant that somebody had to think about it and take the time to submit it. So we're really appreciative of everybody that participated in it. And we look forward to doing it again next year, hopefully with some upgrades, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions from anybody?
Easy.
We're
All
good?
right. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. It's great. Congratulations again, Greg. All right, next item is the MAC Equity Audit Presentation.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Yes. Awesome. I can, sure. Awesome, all right. 1 second. All right, good evening, everyone. I will have my screen set up in 1 second. Just my computer's being a bit slow at the moment.
Might that be better?
I think I've got it. One second. Okay, and let's see if this works. Slideshow.
We can see it.
Okay, great. Let me just put it in slideshow mode to make it bigger. Apologies for the delay.
Great.
Here we go. Come on. Okay, that might have done it. Let's see. Okay, great. All right, good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for your time, for letting me be here with you this evening. My name is Jenny Portionaku. I am a senior education equity consultant for the Mid-Atlantic Equity Consortium, or MAEC. And this evening, I'm very excited to share with you both a summary of the equity needs assessments that we've been working on with Monomoy schools over the last year, and also to talk about some of the next steps going forward. A brief word on who we are. So MAEC operates several different technical assistance centers, one of them being the Center for Education Equity, which is one of 4 federally funded technical assistance centers, equity assistance centers funded by the Department of Education. And so the work that we've been doing has been funded through this grant that we have from the U.S. Department of Ed. So I'll start by giving you an overview of the equity needs assessment. As I understand, there are school committee members here who were not with us when we started this process. So we want to make sure that everyone's on the same page about what an equity needs assessment is and what it consisted of for Monomoy. So an equity needs assessment, really the goal of it is to give us a baseline view of different aspects of equity from an external independent perspective. And so it is a process that can have several different data collections, and it, in this case, also included the use of a tool MAEC developed called the Equity Audit Tool. And a good portion of this was done by Monomoy staff members at each school. So the Equity Audit Tool is really a self-assessment tool, but we also conducted climate surveys with staff, both non-instructional and instructional staff at all 4 schools. We also surveyed families and caregivers and students from grades 4 through 12. So this included taking a look at different perspectives, both from the school end and through individuals and group settings. And we also looked at some existing data from the district, including disciplinary data. So that's what this needs assessment consisted of, to really identify what are the most pressing needs and what are the things that the district is experiencing as successes that we can build on. Part of the reason that conducting an equity needs assessment is important is because it helps us determine the degree to which our schools are equitable. And at MAEC, we have 6 clear criteria for what it means to have an equitable school, including having an equity-centered mission, having an environment, both visual and physical environment, that feels inclusive and representative of the students and staff there in the community, having collaboration between the school and different identity groups, whether it's across lines of race, gender, religion, income, etc., having partnerships with families and the school community, and having systematic professional learning that's grounded in equities, because we can't really expect our educators to be able to implement equitable practices if they don't receive ongoing support and training around them. And an equitable school also importantly cares for the whole child. So it includes social emotional well-being, not just academic success, and it also helps support families and recognizes the cultural assets of those in the community. So really that's what the equity needs assessment focuses on, is giving us an idea of where a particular school in the district or the district as a whole falls against these criteria. So the areas that we focused on in Monomoy, really what we wanted to learn was around the academic expectations. We asked questions on the surveys, and there were items in the equity audit tool that we looked at to help us answer the questions that are here. So the first was around the extent to which the district has positive and accessible learning experiences, the degree to which it maintains a safe and equitable environment, the extent to which the district really fosters strong partnerships with families and the broader community, the degree to which different schools in the district promote inclusive representation and have positive school culture, and the extent to which the district provides staff with that ongoing systematic professional learning that's grounded in equitable practices. And so we triangulated the data that we got, we compared it across what caregivers told us, students told us, and instructional and non-instructional staff told us, and then we looked at where were there common threads between those surveys, the equity audit tool, and the data that we looked at from the district. So here, this gives you an idea. There were teams at each school site that looked through all 8 sections of that equity audit tool, and we encouraged the teams to include representatives across different positions, so not just having administrators, but having a mix of instructional, non-instructional staff, and some teams also included families where they were able to recruit them to join. So this was really meant to get, for each team to have different representatives and different perspectives who could give an assessment of where do we feel our school is against these different criteria. The climate surveys, here you can see the number of respondents that we had. The district did an awesome job of having students take the survey during the school day, so to make sure that we could get as many responses as possible. Almost all staff returned the survey as well. With families, we had 252 families, which I know seems like not enough, but it's actually stronger than the 10% response rate we usually see in other similar sized districts across the country. And then we also looked at the vocal survey data that was from the last year that was available, as well as student discipline data to help us, again, give some context to the things that we learned from the climate surveys and the equity audit tool. So here are some of the things that we learned, and the great thing that happened after this result came out is we did meet with the administrative team and shared the data with all the principals at the district level. We also gave them their school-specific data so that they could review it and work with those consensus teams that did the equity audit tool rating to determine some priorities and presented the data to their faculty as well. And so what each principal created was a list of the top priorities that they have and some initial next steps. The district also did that. So at the district level, some of the bright spots or strengths that really stood out is that across all the different stakeholder groups, everyone generally reported that the district has strong academic expectations. It was the highest rated domain across those different questions that I showed you earlier, and had strong learning environments. Staff, families, and students also generally all felt that the school environments are respectful, inclusive, and welcoming. Across the different schools with the equity audit tool, they self-identified as consistently training educators to use different instructional approaches, which is part of what likely helps to create that learning environment that is supportive for students meeting their learning needs. And there was another strength that came up from the equity audit tool is that all schools noted that they have strong practices around addressing critical education issues in ways that don't stereotype or stigmatize particular identity groups in the community. Some of the places where they identified opportunities for growth was to have stronger supports for engaging all learners. So there's a really strong foundation in the district around this, but it's something they want to build on. Deepening inclusive and culturally responsive academic systems, so really thinking critically about where are there places to continue building representation, and that's been an ongoing project across the curriculum as well. And to also strengthen the consistency of in application of discipline and restorative practices. So as you'll note, none of these are weaknesses. They are all places where we can continue building on the excellent foundation that Monomoy already has. And so the immediate next steps that our leadership team at the district has identified is to, around support for all learners, that there will be prioritization of universal design for learning, which really is a great way to start because of the way in which it responds to different learning needs and has built in portions of it that really address being culturally responsive and representative. So it's a great framework. And the aim there is to start with purposeful planning to provide access for all students. So starting with that framework would help with that classroom implementation and consistency of meeting learning needs. Around family and community engagement support, there will be support for consistent implementation at the classroom and school level. Overall, one of the things we learned is that there was a lot of strong communication coming out of central office, and Joy Gordon does an excellent job around creating systems for family engagement. But many schools identified, and I'll get into that in just a moment, that this is an area where they want more support for individual implementation at the classroom level and school level. All right. So here are some of the school level takeaways, and again, a big thank you to the principals who spent time digging into the data with their teams to identify the bright spots, the strengths they really want to prioritize, as well as the places they want to focus on and opportunities for growth. So starting with Chatham Elementary, some of the bright spots that they really identified and prioritized for building on is having a well-established culture of care and respect. These were items related to this on the survey, and in the equity audit tool rated very strongly for this campus. And also the fact that they have strong both adult-to-adult relationships among the staff and families, but also student-to-adult relationships were identified as being very supportive at Chatham. And aligned with the rest of the district, Chatham also found that it has high academic expectations that it wants to continue building on. Some of the places that they identified as priorities for growth is the student-to-student relationships, where students identify that especially as they go through the grades, that there's more that they would like to have in terms of supportive relationships with their peers, not just with the adults in the buildings, and also having greater comfort in sharing emotions with their peers. The other opportunity for growth they identified is really having more opportunities, again, as I was mentioning earlier, for staff and caregivers to inform policies and procedures. So not just having opportunities to share information, but allowing families and staff to have some input on different policies and procedures and practices at the school level. The immediate next steps that Chatham identified was really around strengthening their social emotional learning programming, which in this case includes expanding their weekly whole class emotional literacy portions and increasing peer relationships in small groups. And again, that aligns to one of the priorities that they have, which is improving those peer-to-peer relationships. The other immediate next step they identified was mobilizing stakeholder engagement, so really recruiting staff and community members to be on their school council and in PTO leadership. So here we see like the next steps they're taking are directly aligned to the pieces that they found from the needs assessment that they want to prioritize. Moving on to Harwich. Also high academic expectations. Again, this was the highest rated domain across the district, and so it shows here as well. Also having respectful teacher to caregiver relationships was identified as a strong point at Harwich, and having a strong sense of belonging and teacher trust among students. And so again, these bright spots and opportunities for growth are things that were identified when you looked at all of the data collections together and identified trends. The opportunities for growth they would like to prioritize are student safety, because students identified bullying as a concern for themselves. And so while they trust that teachers would address bullying, like there's more that the school wants to do to ensure that there's clear definitions of bullying and clear interventions as well, so students feel confident. Administrative responsiveness and opportunities for staff and caregivers. Again, we see another trend here to inform school policies, and really focusing on care beyond the classroom and student emotional comfort. So we're seeing, again, similar patterns in wanting to make sure that students feel good with each other, not just with adults, and staff and caregivers wanting to be more actively engaged in what happens in their buildings. So the next steps that Harwich is going after, one, around student safety. They want to improve education on bullying, especially around what constitutes bullying, and making sure that students and families are clear on what that means and the policies and protocols that are in place to address it. Around family and community engagement, Harwich also wants to think about what are ways to involve stakeholders in the process of creating and maintaining school policies and practices. The middle school had also lots of great strengths that are aligned to what others have rated, so they had strong alignment across what students, families, and staff said, which to them indicates that there's strong shared perceptions of strengths and areas for growth, so folks are having similar experiences, whether they're students, staff, or caregivers. Also high ratings in academic expectations, and also in their survey responses, families, caregivers indicated that they really trust teachers at the middle school and trust that they have high expectations for their students and will support their learning. Across the non-instructional and instructional staff surveys, they also rated very positively when it comes to attitude and culture. Staff feel a strong sense of pride in working at the middle school and feel that the culture is very inclusive for staff. The opportunities for growth they identified is that students did rate lower in school attitude and culture than other stakeholder groups, so although there was strong alignment, this was one place where they want to prioritize student experience. The other place they also want to focus on is opportunities, again, for staff and caregivers to inform those school policies and strengthen partnerships, really thinking about being intentional with communication and connections between home and school. So their immediate next steps is they really want to dig deeper into the student perceptions piece because it differed from a bit from what the adults were experiencing, and to have advisory discussions to continue analyzing that survey data. At the high school level, staff and caregivers, again, very aligned and felt that the school environment is respectful, welcoming, and supportive, not just for them, but also for the students in the building. Administrators and caregivers really feel that teachers have high expectations for student learning, and there's a high degree of trust that these folks have in the teachers in the building. Caregivers overwhelmingly express feeling comfortable speaking with teachers about their children and really express valuing the feedback that they get from their students' teachers. And overall, again, we see a strong sense of staff pride for working in their schools and feeling that administration is really supportive of their work. The places where they would like to focus to continue growing is also related to what we saw at the middle school level, is bullying, specifically online bullying, is an area of concern that high schoolers identified. And again, feeling some degree of hesitancy to share their feelings with their teachers. Caregivers, although they really value the communication that they get, said they'd love more. They would like to get more frequent communication from educators to really get a good idea of their students' progress and for how they can support their child, especially as they get ready to graduate. Staff and caregivers, again, this thread keeps coming through, want more opportunities to really provide active input into the way that school policies are developed. And students would also like access to more clubs and activities that match their interests. I want to name the high school has lots of clubs and opportunities, but again, this is about the degree to which students feel that it really aligns to the things they care about, and so this is something they want to prioritize. So their immediate next steps is around family engagement. They really want to have protocols for more frequent and consistent communication between home and school, and also want to take a look at the clubs that are offered to consider the degree to which they're inclusive of student interests and identities. So with that, my information is here. In terms of what the next steps are as we go, I have taken this slide out, but I think it might be helpful to really quickly show you where the district is going now that we have what we've learned. The question is, so what, right? And so one of the things that has been done, and I'll make this bigger, is that intentional time has been allotted during the summer retreat for there to be more detailed action planning and staging of the work. So you can see here what the overall timeline has been since we started this work in the fall of 2025. And the goal is for the first stage of this work to roll out in the upcoming school year. And again, principals have done a great job of jumping right in and starting to make set priorities so that they can hit the ground running in the fall and really taking steps forward to build on their strengths as well as to continue growing in the places that they want to prioritize. All right. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pause, and I wanted to see if anyone had any questions or things you'd like to discuss.
Questions? Okay.
I'll go after you.
A question. First of all, Jenny, thank you so much for presenting this tonight. Just a few questions. When will we measure this again? Because they're going to be working on their plans, they're going to be implementing, so what's the timeline for doing the research again, or is there?
So we usually recommend, because again, the goal was for this to be a baseline, we know it only represents a brief moment in time when this was done,
right,
is that this be part of a continuous improvement process that happens. It's a very involved process, as you saw, to want to repeat annually, but I think it's good. We usually recommend every 2 to 3 years this be done again, because at that point we would have had time to implement the different strategies and activities that the schools have identified to start seeing if there's some degree of impact. Now, along the way, there's also tools that we offer for the schools to be able to measure their progress, so they're not just waiting until that 3-year mark to do this again, but to also be collecting data along the way to help inform that process of testing, figuring out what's working, what's not, to continually improve before they do that next big benchmark again.
That makes sense. I think 2 to 3 years, for research, because you've got to give time to implement it.
Exactly.
One more question on this is, do you provide best practices for all the schools too? Because again, advisory discussions, continually analyze the survey data, obviously that can vary by school, it could vary by the administrators working on it, but do you provide a best practice and give them a roadmap on this is how to go about doing that to get, to hopefully get the best results?
Yes, absolutely. And so that's part of the reason that we rolled out the data with the principals first and then rolled it out to smaller teams to help them prioritize and then to faculty so that before it became public, they all had time to internalize it and identify those priorities. And now that we have those priorities, we have, I personally have been an instructional coach. We provide technical assistance and research-based strategies so that they can actually address those things. One thing to note about MAEC is, like I mentioned in the beginning, is we operate different technical assistance centers funded by the Department of Ed. One of those other centers besides the Equity Assistance Center are the Family Engagement Centers. So we operate 2 statewide family engagement centers for the states of Pennsylvania and Maryland, as well as Maine. So we have lots of experience around support for that. And actually an exciting update is that the Nellie Mae Foundation, through the work that we've done with them, also awarded Monomoy a $10,000 grant to focus specifically on family engagement. And so we'll be providing, along with those funds, additional development and support with the strategic planning and implementation. So absolutely, we will be continuing to work with Monomoy on the implementation.
Okay, great news. Mr. Edwards?
I was just wondering, and maybe this is a question more for administration than it is for you, just if we're going to get more of a full report at some point. This is really a very qualitative assessment and as opposed to like a quantitative assessment. With close to 1,400 respondents, I find it hard to believe that everybody would, across all demographics would be the same. There's not even a list of the demographics in here, so I'm just wondering if we're going to get a more kind of deep dive into, opportunities of improvement. So.
Yes, absolutely. So just so you know, and I'm not sure if the handout you got has the QR code on it, but we made it available. So the first thing I'll say to answer that question is that we provided the raw data to all school principals for their particular school, so they have those raw numbers to look at, and we did disaggregate by demographics of race and gender. So there is that. The full report exists as a website we created called a story map. Now, one thing to note is that Joy has been doing really great work with the IT folks at the district to make this site more accessible. And so that it exists as a sub-page of the district website. But there is a link and a QR code that should be available in one of the handouts you have so that you can view the whole thing. And I'll quickly show you, here it is on the screen. If you go, it provides an introduction, it gives you an idea of the process that I briefly explained across the triangulation and who we asked about which things. And it also includes a disaggregation of the race and ethnicity of the folks that we surveyed across the district as well. So you do have access to all of that, and you can look at the detailed explanations for each of the domains. So for example, I'll show you school attitudes and culture. It includes a breakdown of how different items were responded to. It gives you what the response rates were for certain things. So all of that is available to you. And like I said, this site will be, we're working on making sure that it's available on the district site so that it also meets accessibility standards, because we want to make sure that it's translatable and also accessible for different abilities and needs, the physical needs that there might be. So yes, 100% you will have access to all of this.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
I have a concern.
You can voice it. We have questions, we have concerns. You can voice a concern, then I have a question.
The one thing that kind of caught my attention was for the Harwich Elementary School for student safety fighting and bullying intervention. And the next steps for student safety was to improve education on bullying definitions and protocols. I guess my concern is if families and students are concerned enough that they're reaching out saying they're being bullied, I'm curious how just educating them on the definition of bullying is a next step as opposed to trying to correct some of those behaviors.
I can give my perspective on it, but I don't know for those of you that actually work directly with the principals if you'd like to answer some of that.
Hi, everyone. Robin Millen, Assistant Superintendent. So when these are just really initial steps, like they got the data on a faculty meeting and broke it all down. So, but when they did break down, and it's these data for the survey and the team, the consensus team, and then they looked at discipline data, bullying data, and other pieces of data at that meeting. And when they broke it down, they didn't think necessarily that it was that fighting and bullying is happening and recurring, and it wasn't being reported that much, and we don't have that many bullying investigations and things like that, but that possible root analysis of that data is that when we, and if you work in elementary schools, everybody says, I'm being bullied when somebody's being mean. So they're going to dissect that more, but that was their initial feeling about that. So that's why they felt that the need was to inform people what bullying truly means, and then we might still have a problem with kids being mean and kids bullying, and then we need to take action on that, but that's where they were at in their discussion.
A question and a concern. How did these scores compare? Now, there's certainly, we have some conclusions for the entire district, but there seems to be a lot of differences between the 4 different schools in terms of the areas of for improvement. How does Monomoy compare with some other school districts in terms of the data?
So one thing I want to note is that when you look at the data, there actually was a lot of alignment around the campuses, especially with the use of that equity audit tool. But we wanted them to identify their priorities among those different data pieces, because it's not going to be possible for each district, or excuse me, each school in the district to address all of the things that came up. And so that's why we wanted them to work with their staffs and faculties to be able to identify what are the things we want to go after in the beginning so they can stage the work. And that's part of where we come in as well, in helping them, okay, so if these are the places you want to start, what are you doing in year 1? In year 2, what are you going to layer on to address the other priorities that are not on this list currently? And so the idea, again, is a gradual implementation, one, so that we don't overwhelm students, staff, or families with a lot of new things, but 2, so we also give time for development and for intentional implementation. And again, the goal here is consistency and quality, not just like immediately going after everything. It's really about following like a structured process to make sure that we can also collect data along the way and continue to get an idea of what's working and what's not. And so that's one of the reasons why you see so much variation in what I showed in the slides. The data wasn't that drastically different across the schools. It's just that their priorities are different from one campus to another. The other thing I'll say is on this question of how Monomoy compared, overwhelmingly meant like the ratings were very positive across the surveys and across the equity audit tool. However, one of the places where we did see that, and it's not different than what we see from other districts with similar demographics, is that some of the ratings for students who identify as Black, African American, or Latino students with disabilities, those particular student groups rated lower than the overall population of students. And so, while one of the challenges that we have in looking at that data, though, is that also the population of these students in your district is so small that it made it hard to find things that were statistically significant. However, we still do look at that data and present it to the principals and to district leadership, because even if your population of students from different backgrounds is small, they deserve to have the same high-level experience that the rest of the student population has. So overall, against other districts in the country, I myself have worked with a couple of other districts in Massachusetts, including Cambridge and Falmouth Public Schools. You rated very strongly overall, and again, we just drilled down to see where are there places where not all students are experiencing that strong experience. So again, overall very strong, but when we drill down, that's where we want to look at where are there places where we could, again, improve and grow.
Understood. Just one more, and that is looking at the middle school, kind of concerned question, and that is the students rated lower in the school in terms of attitude and culture than the other stakeholders. Is that something usual to be seen, that the students would differ from other stakeholders? Would you find generally that it's going to be similar? And how long is that going to take to fill that chasm?
Especially as students get older, it is something that we see when we do this process across other states and other districts, that students will have a different perspective than the adults that they live with and the adults that they work with every day in the school building. The ideal would be that they're having similar perceptions, but what that indicates to us is that perhaps there needs to be, and that's why they identified this as a next step, digging more into exactly where are those differences coming from. A lot of times we'll see that adults tend to rate things higher than students because they're experiencing them as intended, but students are experiencing things by their impact, not their intent. And so it's definitely something we've seen before, and in terms of how long it'll take, I mean, it depends on the further analysis that they do to really zero in on where are some of those discrepancies coming from. And again, a lot of it comes down to adults having really great intentions in implementing, but it not necessarily always landing the way it was intended with students.
Okay, thank you. Any further
Sure.
questions? Okay, Jenny, thank you so very much. We certainly look forward to being able to examine the results further and also seeing the impact that that this data is going to have going forward when the administrators of all the schools can start putting their plans together.
Absolutely, and I'm really grateful for Scott, Robin, and Joy's leadership in this process. They've been with us every step of the way and have been very responsive to the things that they're hearing already. And I'm really excited to see where Monomoy goes from here, because again, it's a really strong district with a lot of great things happening, and it's just, I appreciate the level of intentionality with which they're really approaching how do we make sure that all students are having a strong experience and that it aligns to, again, those perceptions from adults across the community. So I just want to commend you all on having such a great school community and district community. One thing I will say is that now that we've presented to you all, we are also working on a series of public-facing data snapshots that are accessible to families and community members as well. I will be sharing those drafts of those infographics with the leadership team. And so each time, just so you know that I create something for this process, it's always co-created with the district leadership as well, to make sure that it's responsive to your context and includes all of the expertise that they have in the community as well.
Okay? Jenny,
Great.
thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is subcommittee assignments. Now, I know that we had some glitches from administration sending out to the new members, so that's okay, it happens. And we don't have all of the submissions from subcommittee yet. These generally don't take place until September anyway, so I know one of them, negotiations might be a little earlier, but we have time. We're not going to be able to announce it at the next meeting because we'll talk about that format, but on the 15th we will. But if those of you can just get to me over the weekend, subcommittee assignments, I just want to be able to make sure that you get some that you would like to be on, and sometimes we have to fill out all the positions, so you may end up on something that you didn't initially sign up for, but it's important to fill out all of them, and it's important to be able to, as we go along here, to be on the different committees and find out, you really understand what the different issues are and the different dynamics and working towards all those. So anyways, if you can just get those, and we'll get that. Summer workshop schedule. So we sent out a survey, and again, we didn't get everybody's, but that's okay. But we found out that, and it's difficult during the summer to get everybody to be able to come, as we know, because of vacations and commitments and everything, but we need to do this during the summertime. And we had 6 different dates, so these are the dates. And I'm just wondering, with 7/9 or 7/23, is that, how does that fit with everybody else? I don't know who voted on these and who didn't, but, and Lucia, I know that you're going to be...
I'm not here for most of
You're not here in July. What about everybody else, 7/9 or 7/23?
9 is good.
What's that?
9 is good.
9th, is the 9th the best, just looking around to everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, then we're going to do it the 9th, and again, Lucia, I understand that you're not going to be there, but we do need to have this, so we will do that 7/9 at 6:30. Okay? The other is the charting the course. Now, charting the course is from MASC. It's really orientation how to be on a school committee, and it's required for everybody. I went through it 2 years ago, and it was really, I thought, I learned so very much, and it's really one day, and it's 6 hours or so, isn't it?
Yes, if you go in person to mask.
If you go in person?
If you go in person to
Good.
mask with a big group.
Okay, but what, instead of this, because we found the next time they're doing it is going to be in central Massachusetts a few months from now, so
Oh,
instead, what we have come up with the idea is asking Mass to come here and do an orientation, not just with the new members, but with all of us. And it could be a really, really great experience for all of us to do it too together, because we will certainly learn how to work together faster than we would over the next few months. Again, rather than asking for July and August, I'm wondering if maybe the first week of September may work, and how many hours do we need to put aside for this?
So when I talked to Mr. Kuchar from Mask, he said he could do the charting the course for all of you in about 2.5 hours, and I would be joining you as well. But we also can customize that to do some other retreat-type things, depending on what comes out of July 9th, if we want to continue with their support, maybe some team building, some leadership skills, that type of thing as well. So about 2.5 to 3 hours.
So I'm just going to throw out a date, and the first Thursday night in September, would that work?
I believe that's the 3rd, I think.
Is it the 3rd?
Yes.
So September 3rd, would that work for everybody? I'm just going to go right around. Okay, and we'll do it at 6:30.
Do you want to start it a little earlier?
Let's start at,
Yeah, I think you need to start
yeah,
earlier.
let's start at 6 o'clock. How's that sound? 6 to 8:30. Ryan?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yeah, hard to tell, but yeah.
Well, who knows? Who knows? All right, well, why don't we set it then
Okay.
for September 3rd at 6 p.m. here. But I think by all going it together, a good refresher for those of us who have already gone through it, but I think just in terms of the dynamics and maybe some workshop type of things for all of us to work together, get to know each other better, and get to be able to expedite our ability to work together. So that's what we'll do. So the two dates now are July 9th at 6:30 for the workshop. Should we do that earlier?
Up to your team.
Should we do that? Want to do it at 6 o'clock?
That's good.
All right, let's do that at 6 o'clock, July 9th, and September 3rd is going to be the charting the course.
Will there be some kind of record of the workshop so I can catch up?
We don't typically
Yeah.
videotape them.
No.
They're open. We can, up to the chair and the vice chair.
We will fill you in.
Okay.
And
Garen?
both are here.
Yeah, it would be here, right. It's just, we have not traditionally videotaped it.
Yeah.
We do invite anybody who wants to be here as well. We kind of also set up the room a little bit differently, so it's more, have greater ability to participate with each other. But anybody in public can come here as well. You know, that's open, but we just don't videotape it, so.
Can I just say thank you for setting that up where they come here instead of us go to Central Mass?
Yeah, we just didn't think that would be real popular.
It was very,
So-
thank you.
That didn't really make sense. And as it turns out, I think it's just better that we all do it together. I think that would be really, really neat and fun. And we'll bring some food, too. Can we bring some food, too?
Sure.
Okay,
It
good.
keeps getting better.
That makes it better.
Will we have to post that meeting as an agenda?
Probably.
Probably,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we're all together.
Yes, yeah.
I'll check on that. I'll ask Glenn.
But considering these are the people who make the open committee rules.
Rules.
so-
They'll let us
so they'll figure out a way to do it. Okay. Anyways, next item, high-quality instructional materials.
Hey, Ken. So we have been participating in the PRISM grant all year, and for the new school committee members, I included in the packet part of a presentation that I did on grants that we were working on this year back in September. But I just want to give a background on that and let you know where we are at this moment in time. And I need a clicker, hold on. Or no, I don't, that's fine. So the PRISM grant is a partnership for Reading Success Grant, and we've been working with our preschool, our pre-kindergarten team on this grant. Thank you, I don't think that's going to work for this one, but it does directly align to our learning and academic strategic goal, and it is a broad scope grant, and the total number of monies that we were awarded was about $95,000 this year. So the grant allowed us to complete a landscape analysis of our pre-kindergarten classrooms. So for those that may not know, we have an integrated program that has 2 half-day sessions at Harwich Elementary School that meet 4 days a week. And then we have a full-day session called the PUPS program over at Chatham Elementary School. That was our first year doing PUPS at Chatham Elementary School, and it will be continuing into next year. So that's a full day, full school year, 5-day-a-week program. So we were able to do a landscape analysis of those 2 programs, specifically looking at high-quality literacy instruction. There's an observation tool, there's a walkthrough tool. We were able to do that several times this year. That tool allowed us to design professional learning specifically for our preschool team. So if you look, hold on, down a little bit, thank you, down a little bit. The grant allowed us for about $67,000 worth of preschool, professional development specifically for preschool that we engaged in. So that also allowed us to invite our community partners, our independent daycare centers, community preschools, to also engage in that professional learning. And it was focused around the science of learning and what the science of learning looks like for students in that early literacy stage. So that has been completed, and that will continue hopefully into next year as well. The grant also allowed us to pay instructional leadership to conduct a high-quality instructional material review. So we have really a lot of homegrown instructional materials in the pre-K level. It was just an area that in years and years past, it seemed to develop that way, and there weren't a lot of high-quality instructional products that were published out there, and that's changed over the last several years, the research on reading and all of those things. So there's a lot of high-quality instructional materials that are available to us. So we were able to review our existing materials to see whether or not we were getting the educational outcomes that we wanted for our students. We were able to design the priorities that we want about the resources and the instructional setting of our program. And then we were able to say, hey, I think we need to look to see if there might be something different out there. So we reviewed a whole bunch of published materials over the past year. In fact, we even piloted 2 of those products, and that money, the $6,000 to pay the instructional leadership, allowed us to get that work done. So in the end of doing all of those things through the process and all of the time spent in these meetings and doing the professional learning, we did decide that we needed to switch product. So we have come to an agreement, both a consensus agreement and also a voting agreement, that we will be adopting a product called Every Child Ready next year. And I'm just going to change my slide. Every Child Ready had everything that we wanted inside of it. It is aligned to the science of reading. It is a comprehensive product, so it addresses science, social studies, mathematics, all within literacy-based and strong language development in the pre-K level. It is a program that is designed for both 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds. So in both of the programs that we have a 3-year-old program and a 4-year-old program and integrated, and then our PUPS program is combined, 3 years old and 4 years old. So we had to find a product that had both that range of learning. One of the main priorities that came out of the preschool high-quality instructional material design was that we needed purposeful play at preschool. Pre-K kiddos, our littles, they learn through play. So we wanted to make sure we found a product that had purposeful play, and the team felt very strongly that Every Child Ready has that ability, but that it was also not just play, that there was targeted instruction within that play that meets the needs of all learners. So that was also found in this product. They wanted to make sure that the product also had family engagement. We have a broad range of diverse learners in our pre-K programs, so we wanted to make sure that there was a strong family engagement program, and not only that there was strong family engagement, like information, but that it was also providing families with things that they could do to enhance learning outside the classroom as well. And then also that it was flexible and customized to our structures. So as you can imagine, one of our programs is 2.5 hours, and one of our programs is 6.25 hours. So we needed to make sure a program could be flexible enough to meet the needs of all the learners in the different programs. And this particular program ran won out because One of the things that we do very well at Monomoy is do screenings and assessments throughout the year to track progress and specifically growth of our students, to make sure at least everybody's making at least 1 year's growth in 1 year's time, and if needed, more, right? And that people were accelerated and supported if they needed support. So this program actually has a pre-K screener, which is hard to find and is highly rated. It's very strong. We worked with DESE on this project, and we also had consultants from the New Teacher Project, which is consultants that, and they were specifically pre-K consultants that work in this arena, and they strongly supported the assessment structure for Every Child Ready. So their motto is to know where to start, what to teach, and how to measure success. So in the end, this product won out. So our next steps for this professional development and this professional learning and this implementation is that our PD now is going to expand into an implementation professional learning. The PRISM grant that we're working off of right now ends this year, and there was supposed to be a continuation grant offered by DESE next year. We've just heard that that potentially might not happen. So all the teams are across the state that are in this PRISM grant are a little bit scrambling because we just found out way past our budgetary, time. So, but we have other opportunities. We have our title grants. We have some other things that we might be able to tap to make sure that we have a strong implementation professional learning plan. But that is our next steps, to find the funding to really implement this with fidelity, integrity, and make sure that our teachers are supported on this new product. And then we are going to work with that team from ECR on that learning plan, and we're going to launch ECR in the fall and start with that implementation. So we're very excited. If the grant comes back from DESE, I will let you know. So per policy, when we have a big change in any resources or any sort of curriculum, I'm supposed to come to you and let you know, just to advise you. This has no financial impact this year on the taxpayers or anything like that, but as with all products now, there's continuation funds that we'll have to put into the budgets in the future years.
Okay. Any questions at all? Okay, Dr. Mel?
Oh, can I just thank the team?
Of course, of course.
I always do this. I'm like, I'm going to write it down.
Of course.
So there's a coaching team. This is many, many hours of work, so just so you know. So Jen Kelly, principal of CES, Christy Catone, principal at HES, Lindsay Hooper, director of ELA, Erin Cronin is early childhood coordinator and team chair at CES, Melissa McGuire, myself, Allison Joy, the assistant principal at HES. Then there was a curriculum council team, and that's Jen McGilvin, a preschool teacher and instructional leader at HES, Jill Sanderson, a preschool teacher at HES, Maggie McIntyre, a preschool teacher at CES, Caitlin Imparato, who will be the PUPS educator next year, but is an intervention at CES right now, Nancy Capon, who is our L lead teacher. We did many equity pauses, as you heard earlier. It's a priority of our district to make sure that we stop and pause to make sure it's equitable. So Nancy Capon offered our multilingual perspective for that. She's our LE teacher. Elise Johnson-Dry, our special education at CES. And then we couldn't have done this without our TNTP consultants, who are Teresa Rodriguez and Sharday Milton. So thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Doctor. Our next item is a regional agreement review, and I thought this was important for Dr. Carpenter to go through for all of our new members in preparation for the meeting which we're going to be having. And again, that is going to be 2 weeks from tonight. It's going to be, it'll be Howard Select Board, the Chatham Select Board, all of us, town managers, and it's going to be from 6 to 8 o'clock, and it's going to be at the Town Hall Annex in Chatham. So that's not the Town Hall downtown, it's the Town Hall Annex, which is right across the street from the airport. And so anyways, I just thought that it would be very important to be able to go through here so everybody understood this. A good refresher for the rest of us, and what the issues are. Thank you, Doctor.
All right. I guess this has been my last formal presentation to you all. So as Brad said, this is we'll call it a reprise from a presentation I gave this summer this past summer at a workshop for the school committee, and we had some select board members from each town and finance committee from each town, some members to at least take nuggets back. And and it's a lot of different little pieces of information, but I think it can help feed some of the conversations that that are out, that we're going to have, and the conversations that have been happening. So first of all, just to understand why the district even regionalized to begin with. For people who are new to this, and I know Stephen, when he was on the school committee on the first time around, was sort of part of those initial discussions. But at the time, and this actually predated me, so the regional agreement itself predates us coming together. It was defining how we would come together in the language there. But at the time, Harwich had a NEASC accreditation visit, and the NEASC accreditation visit was sort of flagging that Harwich needed to build a new high school or its accreditation was at risk. So the state, and when I was off Cape, the state doesn't want to build small high schools anymore. They wanted, they required, next door to me when I was off Cape was the town of Maynard, and Maynard needed a new high school, and they required Maynard to go to every abutting district and say, could we join you before, and they had to have everybody say no before the state would green light them to build a new high school. So the state was going to hold Harwich to that same standard. Chatham at the same time, if I recall that last graduating class from Chatham High School, was down to about 30 kids in a graduating class. And, and there was just a limited amount of things that the high school could have. The high school band, if I recall, during that graduation ceremony may have been about 7 kids. And, so there was a need for more students, so Chatham needed more students. Harwich needed a new high school. And there was, so there was a mutual interest to come together back then. And I want to also emphasize that it wasn't just that Harwich needed a new high school. The Sisson Road building where the middle school, was, which is now the Cultural Center, it was in dire need of some updates. So had that been still with our district, I'm guessing we would have replaced the windows already and gone through a bigger renovation process in that. I can remember, it was part of the district in the first year that I was here, and there was a few times that winter I'm sending messages out to families, school's going to be open, but send your child in a coat because the boiler's not working today and it's going to be a little chilly. So there was that, there was need on both ends. And, we also know that at this time, in history, Provincetown had just recently closed its high school. So, so some of the writing was on the wall for districts starting to become too small to be viable. So that's the history of what brought us together. And it was not one of those overwhelming votes, particularly in Chatham. It was a tight vote to bring the region together. So if we sort of launch into when the region's together, and in the packet, we went and put sort of the regional agreement as it currently stands is in there. And if you look in the section on the assessment and how the assessment's calculated, behind it is sort of like advanced calculus. And it, so I just want to kind of bring up some of the key pieces of that. So one of the driving factors, the biggest driving factor on how much each town pays to operate the schools is foundation enrollment. Foundation enrollment is not the number of kids that are sitting in the seats. It's the number of children from Harwich and the number of children from Chatham that attend public schools anywhere except Cape Tech. And the reason that it's except Cape Tech is that Cape Tech has a separate assessment that they charge to the towns based on enrollment. So those kids are getting assessed separately. If you've heard me talk about some of the great things that have happened with Monomoy is we've lost a lot fewer kids to school choice elsewhere. Kids that are either at Nauset or DY or Barnstable, they come out of our operating budget. So our budget pays for those children. They're part of our financial obligation, as are the children who go to either Lighthouse Charter or Sturgis Charter. The difference between those two is that the children that attend school choice elsewhere, we get dinged $5,000 plus any incremental costs for special education that the child might have. Children that head off to Lighthouse or head off to Sturgis, we get dinged the entire per pupil cost. So it's 6 times what what a child that we're losing to school choice. So at the end of the day, it's important to do your best to go and keep the children with us in the district that live in Harwich and Chatham, and not be hemorrhaging money out of the budget. The Chapter 70 formula drives a huge chunk of the initial piece. So when Michael's calculating the assessment, and it gets a little more complicated now that the towns are paying for their own elementary schools, but we'll avoid those little mathematical twists. But we first go and take off the top the minimum required contributions. So the state has this very complex formula that says this is how much Chatham needs to pay as the required local minimum, and here's how much Harwich needs to pay first. So that comes out, or comes off the total first. It is not the world's most straightforward equation, and I'll kind of get into some of the pieces behind that. Within that is something called this local effort capacity, which is really looking at the property value that exists in Harwich and the property value, the real estate property value that exists in Chatham. It says, okay, this is a chunk of your local effort, and the other that it looks at is the wealth, like the income tax or the net earnings that the residents in Harwich have versus Chatham. So if we look at FY26 to give you a feel for what those numbers were, in Chatham, FY26, the state lists the property values of all of the real estate in Chatham at $12.5 billion with a B, and Harwich, $10.5 billion. In terms of wealth, income wealth of the two towns, keep in mind here that there's almost twice as many residents in Harwich as in Chatham. So Harwich has a wealth of $733 million according to the FY26 numbers that are behind this. Chatham, $587 million. So it's so if you look relative, one town relative to the other town, Chatham has more property wealth. It's geographically smaller, but we both know that there's a lot more shoreline in Chatham, and we also know that most of our families aren't living in those houses on the shoreline. the families that are coming to Monomoy are living more inland. So in this Chapter 70 equation, the state calculates this foundation budget. So the foundation budget, it's looking at for the whole state, and it comes up with, if I'm correct in my memory, it comes up with a magic number that's I think 49, it sort of expects that the state's going to kick in 49% of the minimum that's required to provide an adequate education. So the state's going to pay for 49% of that, and the towns will pay, will pay 51% of that amount. And again, that's a minimum. Most communities, or a lot of communities, will choose to go spend far more than that minimum. But there are some towns who do pay close to that minimum, and if the town is going to try to pay less than that minimum, the state will go sort of fine and require them to go bring up the spending so that the children are provided that minimum amount. Not every child is created equal in this equation. So children who come from homes where they're low income, children that come from homes or that are English language learners, because they have higher needs, they get those children get proportionally more funding. So the state's trying to equalize, the amount of funding that's going or that's being required based on the demographics that may happen within a district. And then we have this lovely calculation that the state comes up with, the targeted local contribution. And I want to emphasize here, the Chapter 70 formula is above my pay grade. It's above your pay grade. It's one of these things that's set by the legislation, and it is something that DESE they calculate the number. We don't have the ability to go and say, Harwich doesn't have the same economic capacity as Chatham. The state runs it through their system. And so the state emphasizes in the literature they have that this target local contribution, the key word that they say, that it will vary in proportion to an individual town's or the municipality's wealth. Well, it does to an extent. But if you are in some of the most wealthy districts in the state, or the wealthiest towns in the state, it doesn't differentiate between those in this sort of top tier. And we are in a very unique regional district in that both of our towns are in that sort of top tier. Chatham is, in terms of wealth per individual, in the top handful of towns in all of Massachusetts in any given year, and Harwich isn't far behind them. Again, it's that property wealth that Harwich has that really brings that up far more than where I currently live in Plymouth. But even Plymouth is above that little average. So Plymouth is considered to be relatively wealthy than if you go slightly further inland. So again, varies in proportion, but a punchline to this story is the way the Chapter 70 formula works in our district, it treats Harwich and Chatham identically. And that's a bit of the rub that you sometimes are hearing, and it's something that we don't set. The state sets this. So there's a municipal growth factor. So every year the state sort of updates these wealth factors, and it will say, okay, how much can the town grow? So you have Prop 2.5 that can grow it, but you also have, are there new housing developments going in, and new ability to go in, to go tax, and ultimately the state calculates this amount that's the required local contribution, and that's what we go and send off to each town, say, okay, we're first taking off the top the required local contribution for Harwich and Chatham. Those required local contributions, for all intents and purposes, when it comes to our district, are the same as that target local contribution. It's just the way, it plays out for our towns. Trends in foundation enrollment, since we've come together. The foundation enrollment is slowly but surely coming down. So we know we're losing enrollment. There's just fewer and fewer children in both of our towns. It's not just Chatham and Harwich. One of the things that I think is a unique challenge for our region that I didn't experience when I was off Cape is, when I was off Cape, the two towns in the region, when I was off Cape, over the 13 years that I was there was a negligible shift in foundation enrollment from one town to the other. Over the 13 years that we've been together as Monomoy, we started at about a 70-30 split, and it shifted by 3%. And Dan might say, Dr. Carpenter, 3%, that doesn't seem like much. But if you think about it, when you start to put together a budget, it's like almost every year, before we've done anything to the budget, there's about 0.5 to 1/3% has shifted from Chatham to Harwich before we've done anything else. So you could imagine if the town of Harwich were to say, okay, well, we only want your spending to go up by 2%. Well, if it was 0.5% shift in that year, we've already exhausted 0.5% of that growth. So that's, I think that's one of the unique aspects to what's playing out here. And it's just that Chatham has lost young families at a faster rate than Harwich. But in a couple minutes here, I'll share with you some pretty stark numbers that Harwich is catching up to Chatham really fast. And I think a little faster than we were thinking over the last couple of years. So again, if you go into the digital version and you click on the spreadsheet, you can go look at how this equation plays out for the two towns over the last 13 years. But I think the punchline, maybe the next slide, sort of shows it the most. So if you look at this magic number that the state comes up with, one of the numbers in this sheet that I gave you as part of the Chapter 70 equation is this combined effort yield. So the way that's calculated is if you take the total amount of the property values and the taxable income that could come off of that, and the income tax that could come off of the income, and the way that the state's calculating a town's wealth, and you divide that by the amount that the state believes that town should be paying as a minimum per child. So that's going to be based on how many kids from that town are part of that foundation enrollment. They come up with this magic percentage, and it'll be like what percent of the total wealth is the amount that we expect you to pay. In Chatham, that amount is 806.6% higher in FY '26 than, than what the state calculates that minimum required contribution. So the taxable amount out there is 806% higher. Harwich, which of all the towns in the state, I believe there's like 300, what is it? 351. So Harwich is 36, Chatham's 4. So Harwich's capacity is 213.7%. So the ability of Chatham to pay according to the calculations, Chatham has 4 times that capacity, but the state does not treat Chatham and Harwich any differently because the state sets the baseline at 82.5, and as long as that magic number is higher than 82.5%, the state doesn't require you to pay anymore. It just kind of caps the minimum. But there are a lot of communities that are above that 82.5 or 82, I think it's 82.8. There's a lot of communities that are above that, but the state doesn't differentiate this. So every couple of years, the state will send out things to superintendents. Do you have any suggestions on how we could change the Chapter 70 formula? And I will write a mini novella and I'll send it to the state. And I'm guessing that you're not going to be able to go and get this one through because I'm guessing Provincetown and Orleans and Weston and everybody else that's above that number would like to see some state funding help pay for their schools. And you need to go and get a majority of votes through to get it passed on Beacon Hill. But the way the equation plays out to calculate that minimum amount that we take off the top, it doesn't differentiate between Chatham's wealth and Harwich's wealth. And that is some of why we hear some of the angst in these conversations. And as I said, changing the Chapter 70 equations not going to be something that that we can do or can influence. And I think that is a thing just to have as you go into these conversations. This has nothing to do with enrollment, nothing to do with the Chapter 70 formula, but just in terms of trends in population. The Chatham population is running fairly flat, over the last 20, almost 30 years. Harwich's has started to creep up, but I don't know that we're not seeing evidence that it's creeping up when it comes to families with school-aged children, and that becomes pretty apparent here in a moment. So we changed the regional agreement back in 2022, and one of the reasons that it came about is it was over the first few years as superintendent, it was becoming pretty obvious looking at the numbers that there was an unintended consequence in the way the assessment formula was playing out, and I can just remember basic economies or economics class that I had long ago in a galaxy far away, with this whole this whole concept of if you have a larger system, you have economies of scale. Smaller systems are just going to be, by default, more expensive to run. So I had at the time our business manager look at what was the per pupil spending. If we really look at the per pupil spending that's happening at Harwich Elementary School and Chatham Elementary School, because we had done everything we could as a district to make sure we were spending the same amount on the children and putting in the same, having class sizes, as similar as we could between the two, the curriculum the same quality teachers, but the spending at Harwich Elementary School was significantly less than Chatham Elementary School, and it was just an economics economy of scale. You have one principal in each building, and you have that principal's salary divided out amongst a lot more kids at Harwich Elementary School. So, and then you take a school nurse and all these other things that you have to have as a building, and it was just clear that there was a subsidy that was going on that wasn't anybody's intent in bringing the district together. So I wrote a little white paper, presented it to the school committee, and suggested that it would make sense to come up with a tweak to the regional agreement where each town paid for their own elementary school, because at the time, I think when we first started to notice this, it was about a $300,000 or $300,000 subsidy that was happening. But I could model it out and sit there and say, in just a few years, this is going to be well over $1 million. It has surpassed $1 million for the last few years. Again, if we want to provide the same quality of education for the children, both cost more because Chatham Elementary is smaller, and as Chatham Elementary keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller, that cost keeps getting larger and larger and larger. So at Chatham Elementary School, when we first came together, there were 3 classrooms per grade level. We were going to be at a place where we're down to 1 classroom per grade level. It's much more expensive. Harwich Elementary was 6 classrooms per grade level. It's dropping fast. So to review the regional agreement, the regional agreement says that at least every 5 years, the committee will undertake a review of the terms. And, so we're at that time to go look at it again. And it's important to note that that regional agreement isn't between this school district and the 2 towns. It's a regional agreement between the 2 towns. Okay, so it's an agreement between the 2 towns. To amend the agreement, there needs to be a 3/4 vote that's happening here at the table. Of course, it's got to be, voted and approved to get put on the warrants by the 2 select boards, or you could have a petition signed by 10% of the voters in a town to go and have a change to the regional agreement. But even if the school committee says, okay, we want to see this happen to the regional agreement, or even if these conversations between the 2 select boards with the school committee there come up with something, it's not going to change unless it gets a majority vote in both towns, not just one town, but both towns. So whatever we do, there has to be something where there's a middle ground, that people can see it as a win on each side. So, as I said, behind the regional agreement, there was the last time was to change the unintended fiscal inequity of the language. We also acknowledge that there's a lot of obsolete language in the regional agreement. I mean, there's a huge piece of it that talks about how the district is going to come together. We're together. We don't need that anymore. And just before this meeting, Stephen's like, so Scott, are we going to get rid of the obsolete language? Maybe, maybe not. So I'll share with you why we didn't. The last time we took the language and, it needs to be approved by the towns, but it also has to be approved by the Commissioner of Education. So we sent the suggested changes to the Commissioner of Education, who sends it off to his legal team, and there needs to be a lot of time given, so you're sending it off in December and January to get it ready to go on a warrant, 2 months later, and still you're like trying to push them like, I need an answer. And the legal team's coming back with, well, we'd like to see this change and this change. I'm like, no, like, we just want to change the finance and we just want to get rid of the obsolete language. And they were wanting to go touch other aspects of the agreement, their legal team, and I'm like, you're missing the point. Like, I believe if you go to town meeting, you need to kind of keep things simple, not go to town meeting and you have to give a 5-hour presentation on all the changes that DESI wants to see to the regional agreement, and have people pick it apart and not get to a yes. So we wanted to get rid of the obsolete language, but recognized that the important thing was to address the fiscal piece. And then we will, again, we can try to go send it. There's a new commissioner. There will likely be a new legal team. Clearly the legal team last time thought everything was fine. The commissioner's legal team back in 2021, that legal team wanted to see things change. So you never really know where it's going to go, but I would strongly recommend focusing on what's the important thing that you need the towns to address, and if we can address the finances, and if they don't want to touch everything else and they'll bless it and approve it at the state level, fine. But if they want to go mess with a whole bunch of other things, just take the finances and come back in some other year and go have obsolete language and things like that, and don't lose sight of what matters. Like, having the obsolete language just makes it 3 pages longer than it needs to be, but it tangibly doesn't get in the way of what you need to do. Okay, one of the things that you will hear, and I've heard in Harwich, is that our amount of school spending is getting close to half of the town's expenditures. I will just point out this: when I was off Cape, school spending in a bedroom community in the suburbs of Boston was 3/4 of the town's spending. So approaching half of town spending. I may be biased here. No offense to any firefighters or DPW workers, but the schools, my opinion, the most important piece of that. It's the future of the towns and the future of our region. It's the percent of the budget that is the schools has a lot to do with just the demographics of a community. And yes, Chatham has a lot of retirees relative to families with school-aged children. So as of, what's this? I think this was 2008. It was around, FY, is that 19?
7 and 19.
7 and 19.
It was, 41% of the municipal budget in Harwich and 21% of the municipal budget in Chatham. But again, significantly less than the state average for both of our towns. All right, enrollment trends. I deliberately have the canary in a coal mine here because I think this is something that the school committee needs to kind of know, understand, and it is a reality. We're seeing the enrollment in the district plummet. Again, completely related to the ability of families to afford to live in our two towns. And it has been happening rapidly in Chatham, but it has picked up speed in Harwich, and it's getting real fast in Harwich. So, so the numbers, the numbers up there that are larger are what I presented this summer. Under Chatham Elementary and Harwich Elementary, the little number in red and yellow are the important ones to look at. This is kindergarten. Okay, so Chatham Elementary, as of Friday, when I spoke to the principals, 15 children that are Chatham resident at Chatham Elementary School. Play this forward 5 years. So we'll have kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade. 5 cohorts of kids at 15. In 5 years, Chatham Elementary, it's going to be 75 kids. Harwich Elementary, as of Friday, there were 40 children, there were Harwich residents enrolled for kindergarten at Harwich Elementary School. Play that out, 5 years, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, 200 kids. And when we came together, Harwich Elementary was the largest elementary school on Cape Cod. 200 kids. It's smaller than what Chatham Elementary School was when we came together, is what we're going to be looking at in just 5 years. Now, sure, we go and bring in school choice children, so those 15, those classrooms of 15, we'll try to bring them up to 18 with school choice, and we'll do the same for the classrooms at Harwich. We'll try to bring them up to about 18. We'll try to keep those, use school choice to keep the classrooms level. But the size of those elementary schools has plummeted. And so Harwich Elementary School, if we have 40 kindergartners, Robin, you're going to be the superintendent. How many classrooms would that be? This is a math exercise. We need Dan's help. So Dan, 40 divided by 18 kids? Yeah. 2, 3, if we're trying to bring up. Okay. Used to be 6 sections at kindergarten 13 years ago. We're down to 2 and change. Like it's, so and those kindergartners, in a blink of an eye, are going to be up in the middle school. In a blink of an eye, they're going to be at high school. And, and you'll be like me, looking back 13 years, it's like your seniors that were in kindergarten just handed them diplomas last week. There's going to be a lot less seniors to be handed diplomas to. And I think one of the things that this school committee is going to have to wrestle with is, okay, what is the right thing for our elementary kids? And I will say I don't think it's good for the kids in the building, the adults in the building, to have 1 section per grade level. And I think that's something that this committee needs to wrestle with. I think we need to wrestle with it with our towns. The other canary in the coal mine, and this is what I shared this past summer, is if you look at the demographic numbers in Barnstable, we have been tracking on the elbow of the Cape the trends that are happening at Barnstable Public Schools. We're just 10 years behind them. So so there's a demographic shift that's happening. And, and what we're seeing is, we're seeing our children that we serve have far more financial need at home than when we came together as a district. And if you look at where Barnstable is today, today 50% of their children come from homes that are socioeconomically impoverished. At the moment for us, that number's hovering around 40, but Robin and I both understand that's not an accurate number here, because in September, when the state goes and looks at these numbers and calculates them, our families are more flush. A lot of our families, are in the feast and famine economy, where it's like flush during the summer, when there's work, and things get awful tight by March, and that's a reality. And if you look at, the one indicator out there that best predicts how well children are going to perform in school, it's that socioeconomic piece. And as that number of children that are more socioeconomically challenged increases, that's where I think it's imperative for the schools to come in and say, okay, how can we backfill this to support the families that we serve? We're also seeing that same trend happen when it comes with our L populations. Our L populations have increased and are continuing to increase. So there are resources that we're going to need. So we're talking about, our numbers are going down. Yes, our numbers are going down, and the percentage of the children that have intensive needs are continuing to increase. Again, just looking at the demographics, you see it most. You see those trends happening most at the elementary level. That's what's happening at the elementary level is going to be what's going to show up a handful of years later at your middle schools, and 10 years later at your high schools. So we're seeing these shifts, and the whole piece on our English language learners, it's not just a couple languages that we're dealing with. I think one of the things I love about the towns we have, there's all these J1 workers who come here from all over the world, and some come and stay, and we'll have a lot of one of this and one of that. So yes, we have a lot of Haitian Creole, we have a lot of Portuguese, we have a lot of Patois, we have a lot of Spanish, and then there's a little bit of this, and 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 that need continues to increase in the breadth of those languages. And I have to applaud, a lot of the work that Joy does is helping us make sure that we're reaching each one of those families in the language that they speak at home. Michael has spent a lot of time just kind of looking long-term out there. What are the facility needs that we have? We have a lot of big-ticket items in our elementary schools, at the middle school, at the high school, and we've been talking about needs to replace boilers, generators that are going to need to be replaced, roofs, windows. So the high school is now 12 years old, but if you look at, a lot of the infrastructure in the other buildings is starting to get to that point where you're going to have big expenses happening. I think, we're blessed that, the middle school project is, we're getting the outside of that envelope of the building secured. It's a wonderful resource for our towns. but we have a lot of costs coming up at the elementary levels. Major capital needs at the secondary, the middle school and high school level. Left side are middle school projects, so we know that the window siding project's already underway. The roof will start next year. At some point, we'll have to replace the boiler, and we had this whole conversation that the state doesn't want to go replace boilers with boilers. The state wants to go all electric, and and if we go all electric, the number of replacing a $5 million boiler becomes a lot bigger number. We've got classroom furniture that we want to make sure that we're replacing. Middle school generator, we want to make sure that that gets replaced to make sure that we've got good redundancy for the wonderful power outages that we get to have here on the Cape. On the high school side, luckily the building's only 12 years old. The challenge, sort of pressing challenge out there is that turf field and track are starting to get to the end of their functional lifespan, so that's going to be an expensive project that the district's going to have to face in the upcoming years. At the elementary level, we have boilers that need to get replaced. If we replace them in kind at Harwich Elementary School, it's probably over a $6 million project. State's not going to provide any financial aid on that because the state wants to go all electric. Go all electric, it's going to be a much more expensive thing. Everything that's happening at the middle school right now needs to happen at Chatham Elementary School. The two projects were done essentially at the same time, so that's looming. If you really look at all the different projects that are up there, there's $22 million in capital needs just looming at the elementary school. So, two last slides and things that the committee might think about. So I think as you head into the conversations in 2 weeks, I think one thing that I would suggest that the school committee and administration look at is what is our commitment going to be to universal preschool in our towns. Again, looking at that, our families have more and more need that we're serving. We have space within our buildings. We could definitely accommodate preschoolers. We also don't want to be in a situation where we're pushing the few local providers out of business. I think we have been blessed that both of our towns have approved the $10,000 vouchers for preschool, but those of us who have had kids in preschool knows the $10,000, if you're a parent, or doing full-time work, the $10,000 doesn't pay for all of it. So how can we support our families, and do we? I think our PUPS program at Chatham Elementary School, which is sort of a full day school year length, is helping support families. But I think the preschool, universal preschool conversation's an important one. And it also feeds into how much space do you need in the buildings. The last thing that I shared this past summer is we're also getting to that place that maybe if you're looking at 75 kids that are Chatham resident and 200 children that are Harwich resident in the next handful of years, is it time to think about, do you build one elementary school, avoid $22 million in renovation costs, and get everybody under the right-sized roof with the latest of tech, with the latest in technology and HVAC systems and everything else. And I think there's an argument that one could make that it could be a more financially advantageous thing than going through and renovating two separate buildings. But again, I don't know, it was 8 years ago. I still have arrows in my back from the last time I mentioned this, but I fully understand that Chatham families want to have their kids in Chatham, and Harwich families want to have their kids in Harwich, but maybe there's some place where it's somewhere in the middle, because neither of our elementary schools are kind of close to that middle ground. But I think that there's both savings that could be had looking at something like this, but I also think there are huge educational and social emotional gains to be had. In the newspaper in the last week, if you saw, Nauset is currently looking at this very thing, sort of recognizing that that maybe it doesn't make a lot of sense to have 5 different elementary schools. And can you do some sort of consolidation? So I'll stop there, but I think this gives you some food for thought as you go into conversations 2 weeks from now.
Any questions for Dr. Carpenter? All right. I just thought it was very important for us, a couple weeks out now to be able to see this. And obviously it's going to become a major discussion over this next year. So, Doctor, thank you so much. So again, that is 2 weeks from tonight, 6 to 8 at the Town Annex in Chatham. Okay.
I did receive an email with a link to a Zoom or Google Meet, and it said it was a hybrid, and I just was wondering what the expectation, if we go in person or...
I'm sorry, Kate, I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did receive a Google Meet or Zoom. They said it was a hybrid, so I was just wondering what the expectation, if you want us there in person.
I think we all want to be there.
That's
All
what I
the
was-
select board's going to be there, so I think it's important for all of us to be there for that night. I think it's for the hybrid, my guess is for, public meetings so that anybody could see it, but for us, we all need to be there.
Thanks for clarifying. Thank you.
Okay. Something else that is about to happen is new superintendent transition. So, Dr. Miller.
Good evening, everyone. I was asked by the chair and the vice chair to come and just update you on my transition plan that was provided to the interview and selection committee in January when we were selected, as I was selected to take over the superintendent's role in July. So I've had the wonderful benefit of being able to transition from January to about now. And I have the full transition plan in the packet, but I thought I'd just give you a quick highlight and let you know where we're at as far as next steps. Just so that you know, the transition plan is rooted in core values, my core values as well as the district's core values, and it's also designed to make sure that we still continue to operationalize the strategic plan. So as we go through this transition work, we're aligning it with the goals of the district, and I'll explain how that will come together eventually. But there's just a brief overview of our mission of our district, but it's also a mission of me as a superintendent, but the vision. And then those are my core values, but if you know the core values of the district, they're very closely aligned. It's this transition plan and the plans as we move forward will be built on the knowledge that everybody should grow and learn. There's dignity, there's voice when it comes to dignity, caring and compassion, stewardship, responsibility, courage, and risk-taking. So there's several stages to this transition plan, and when you can't sleep at night, you can read the whole thing if you'd like. But essentially, we will operationalize that strategic plan. We're working. Considering I'm from here, I know the district, I know the strategic plan. We're going to make sure that continues. We're going to continue the work, and hopefully there'll be no bumps along that continuation of operation in the strategic plan goals and action steps. We are conducting a systematic diagnostic review, and you might say, Robin, why do you need to do that? You've been with the district mostly since 2014. I'm doing it through a different lens. So, you know, my roles have been assistant principal, principal, and director, and then assistant superintendent. And now I'm going back and looking at it as if I was superintendent, and what am I seeing through that lens? And that works along leadership frames, which are structural, human resources, political frames, and symbolic frames. So I'm really, every time I meet with somebody or talk with somebody, I'm like, pretend you don't know me. Like, pretend I'm coming from outside the district, and what would you want to tell me if you didn't think I knew something or wanted something to be done? And then this is a multi-channel framework. It is going to be very transparent, so what we will do is, once we have findings and once we take all this information in, I will publish those findings. I will send them back out to all the stakeholder groups that we've talked to, and, you know, all the diagnostic places that we're taking data and stuff, and I'll say, did I get it right? Are these initial findings of our district something that, am I thinking this right? You know, I have a certain internal bias, but I want to make sure I'm getting feedback after I present those findings from this transition plan and entry plan. So that's just kind of a high focus of that. Since January, we have been listening and learning. So Assistant Superintendent McMillan over there has been on this dog and pony show with me, and we literally started with central office, and we have been taking time to meet with all of central office, all the administrators, all the directors, everybody in central office, administrative assistants and things like that. So that has almost been completed. We've branched out now to meet with the custodial staff, the cafeteria staff. I have my first JOSM meet and greet at the high school tomorrow. I've started making appointments to talk and meet with all of you, and that will come in a minute, the rest of that invitation. So we've really been doing that first initial kind of, and I ask the same questions to everybody. What are successes in this district? What are improvements that you would like to see? How is communication? You know, what could we do if we did something immediately? You know, what shouldn't we change? What are the values that we absolutely should not change? So the same questions, but we're starting to gather some really great information. I think Michael and I at first were like, are we really going to get information? Are people really going to tell us what they think they need or feel or want, or, you know? And we've been collating a lot of information that is really fresh and really interesting and really good things, and then things that we do need to improve upon. So again, I have appointments with the town officials set up already. I have union leadership. I've been meeting with them regularly, and then we have these meet and greets that are already set up. I did a staff meet and greet this week as well. Thanks to Joy Jordan, she's helping me with all of the scheduling of this and pointing me and directing me and telling me to get there. So really the goal with the administration team, it will start this summer, and that's to deepen the trust with them as well. I've been with them, again, most of them, through the duration of their own leadership, but now there'll be a change as far as the superintendency and the assistant superintendent. And I've done this several times. I've changed positions here in this district, but I don't want to overestimate or underestimate that transition for them and for me. So that will be happening. We're doing a lot of planning right now for the administration retreat this summer. And then next steps. So the transition plan that I wrote was from January to July, and then I wrote an entry plan for July until early fall. So really that continues this work. One thing that we talked about with the chair and the vice chair is I really want to meet with each one of you. A lot of you are new. Some of you have been here, but I still would like to meet with you through this new role. So I would like to invite you to breakfast. And so I will be sending out an invite, and we'll take you to breakfast one-on-one, and we'll ask you a series of questions, and then you can ask us questions, and we can get to know each other under that kind of situation. We did it already, the charting our course with the committee, and I'm glad we're going to be doing that internally. I have enrolled in the new superintendent's induction program, so it's called NISIP. We have an acronym for everything. I have had a phone call with my coach. She lives in Plymouth. She's a retired long-term superintendent, so I will meet in person with her just after the July 4th holiday. And then the listening and learning tour will continue, and then we will, like I said, make those actionable transition plans, send it out to the stakeholders, get feedback on it, and then we will present, sounds kind of formal, I'm not sure what we'll call it, but like a state of the schools of the findings, and we'll start releasing those like in short bits to our community and get some additional feedback as to how we move forward in conjunction with our strategic plan your goals, my goals, and then moving forward into the school year.
Great. Any questions for Dr. Millen? Okay, well, we're really looking forward to it in terms of supervision.
Thank you.
I mean, we're not looking forward to, transitioning out, but we're looking forward to the transition which is going to happen. That's what I meant. That's what I meant to say.
Just put me on pasture.
Okay. All right, lithography press.
Good evening, school committee. Michael McMillan, school business manager. So I've got 5 agenda items here, but I reassure you that the time per agenda item shall come down somewhat, I think, over the next few. So the first really is just a piece of information just to update you on some discussions we've been having about lithography press that the high school has that's currently in storage and is not being used. And our art department here at the high school have been working with the town of Harwich Cultural Fair Centre to see if there's a space there that they might be able to use to set up this piece of equipment so people will be able to use it. So we've kind of come up with this agreement in order to allow that to happen, and I just wanted to let you know, I'm not sure that vote's necessarily required. I was just to inform you that we are going to be loaning this equipment to another public organisation. So, I mean, I think this is great because it'll get it out of storage, because it's, longer things sit in storage, the less good condition, and this means it will get out of storage, it will get into use, and it'll be, and it also helps build relations with the community. So, I just wanted to let you know. And it will go to, it will also go to the select board to make sure they're happy about taking it. There's no cost to the district, the town's insurance and everything will cover it. So I think it's a great opportunity.
Right, absolutely.
All right, that's the first one.
Okay.
That was easy.
You're doing great so far.
Thank you very much. The next couple of items are donations from students to a couple of different charities. So just the background to this is that we have accounts set up called student activity accounts. Technically, it's the students' money, so we just hold it for them. And if it was the districts or not, schools are not allowed to donate money to charity. So normally, if this was happening, we wouldn't allow it. But because it's the students' money, we're allowed to make this donation on their behalf. And given that it's this kind of funky thing that's normally not allowed, the guidance from the state is that we just let you know and get your approval before we make any donations of this nature on behalf of the students. So the first one is a donation of $1,000 from the Monomoy Regional High School Key Club to the Sharing Kindness, which they raised through a suicide. Actually, they raised it through a bake sale they had at town meeting. So, and that money will go to help funding this suicide awareness walk.
Okay, do we have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Ms. Brett? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that's approved.
All right. So the next one is also a donation. This one is for $100 from the Monomoy Regional High School Sanskrit Club to the Cape Cod Museum of Art.
Okay, do we have a motion for approval?
My motion.
Okay, second.
Second.
All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, that is approved too.
All right, so the next item is the rates for substitutes and other non-union positions. So the way I think about it, we have sort of 3 buckets of salaries or rates that we pay people. One is all those that are in our collective bargaining agreements with our unions. One is where we have essentially individual contracts, and the other is substitute rates are really temporary positions where people are coming in for a short time or they're doing work for a short time, and we have separate rates. So we've gone over the last few years, we've done a process of collating them all into this one document and just reviewing it once a year. So this year, there's an attachment to the memo, and it gives you the current rate and the proposed rate. We're not proposing to make a lot of changes. Before we do this, we kind of just sense check if we're having trouble recruiting people. we compare ourselves to other districts, and that's really how we decide. Is that there's a bit of a science, it's a bit of an art, trying to determine the right rate. So there's just a few changes from the last time this was voted. We've added a certified nursing assistant position that's required for the extended school year program. So that's when we run a special education program during the summer. So that's not covered by a teacher contract, so we have to have separate rates for that. We've not had a certified nursing assistant at that program before, so we're just adding that with teachers and instructional assistants, and a certified nursing assistant. So that's been added at $30 an hour, which is $5 more than we pay the instructional assistant, given the increased required certification. So that's one. We're adding a temporary IT support assistant. So that's really just somebody to come in and help the IT department as they get up for the new school year. So that's getting all new computers refreshed and ready to go. And so one of the budget saving things we did last year was we reduced one position from the IT department. So they're able to, so they're absolutely able to cope with this, but this will just help them out because it gets a bit intense over the summer while they get everything ready. So it's $21 an hour. It's just temporary, and it will be, it's $4,000-ish, we said. We've budgeted for that. The last two things, we've increased the custodian rate by $1 an hour for each step. We have 3 steps for substitute custodians. And that will, we spend a lot of money on, right now we're spending a lot of time on overtime for custodians, so our existing, because we can't find substitutes, so our existing custodians are doing a lot of overtime, which, sometimes they appreciate it, but we're asking a lot of them, and it's very expensive. So if we sort of nudge up our substitute rate, we're hoping that'll attract a few more people in. And the last thing is we're looking to increase the student workers rate. It's currently $16 up to $17.50. So, we have students here working in the TV studio. They do sometimes help out in the auditorium, and, $16, but they're working. It's an educational experience, but they're also working. And $16 just wasn't really cutting it compared to what they can get in local cafes, restaurants, and stores. And the last thing was I just added, we had athletic rates for timekeepers and referees and officials, and I've just added that to the list as we kind of consolidate. We've not changed the rates though. So is there any questions on any of that kind of stuff?
Any questions? All right, do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, it's approved.
Thank you very much. All right, ends in sight, last one. And I apologize, this was put onto the agenda last minute, actually after the last minute, because we are looking to lease to own new devices, Chromebooks and laptops and desktops for mostly students and staff. Mostly for students, also for staff. There's like a crazy shortage of devices right now. So we were in line to purchase them, and then we were getting phone calls from the salesperson saying, hey, there's only like 200 of this type, there's only 200 of this type left, and 300 of this type, and the clock was ticking, which is why we sort of got it onto the agenda at the last minute. We're leasing them to own over 3 years. So we sort of we pay the cost over 3 years. That just, limits the impact on the budget year to year, and it helps us create a cycle. The idea is for the Chromebooks that students get new Chromebooks in grade 5 and in grade 8. So they keep them for 5th, 6th, and 7th, and then those ones get recycled down to elementary school. And then they get a new one when they start high school, which is good because that means they go into high school with a new device. They keep that for 5 years, and then if we are able to extend it, those will also go back down to elementary school. So that's the plan that Mackenzie, our IT director, who's fantastic, has come up with, and we're putting that into place now. And so every year we'll be kind of doing another lease, and the idea is, depending on rates, we'll have 3 leases going at a time. So the devices themselves are bought off state purchasing contract, and then the leasing I went to 3 different leasing companies and got the cheapest lease rate, which is a company called First American Equipment Finance. But because the reason we're here in front of school committee is because we're leasing to own, we're essentially creating an obligation for future years, and that's so it's a bit like debt, and there's special provision in Mass General Law that says it requires board approval. So that's where we're here.
Any questions?
I do have a couple questions.
What-
Chromebooks is on here twice?
Yes, so there's two things. Actually, there's also a mistake in the Chromebook. So the quantity is double what it should be in both lines. And it's just because there was, so it should be 160 and 140, not 320 and 280. But the price doesn't change, sadly. That's just a typo, my mistake. But it's there twice because we have two different purchases, because we're buying them from two different locations, because we didn't have them in the same location. So I just listed it by the invoice that we have. So it's not, we are just buying that many Chromebooks.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Those abstain? Okay.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, moving right along, we're going to, Dr. Carpenter, you can talk about the building committee?
I'm trying to remember if we had I think we had a meeting since our last one. It was largely focused on the window installation and making sure that the windows as installed are following the architect's plans for it. And again, we have a absolutely great building committee that have many of them have a lot of experience installing windows. So I'm sure that our project manager was getting feedback from the group on, as were the architects, on the sample window that they were showing us, and they were getting a lot of direct feedback on things they would like to see improved about the installation. So we have another building committee meeting on Monday where they will be showing us the revised installation, and they've begun some water testing on some of the windows too. So that's sort of like the big focus. And one of the challenges, and I think the frustration that I have had, and I know that Rich has had as well, and Michael and Robin, is that you would think that before you install hundreds of windows that you'd kind of figure out exactly like this is how we're going to go and replicate the installation again and again and again and again and again, but that's not exactly how they've approached it, and I think some of it has, don't want to defend the contractor, but I think some of it has been they're trying in earnest to make sure that they get this project done, and we have the classroom spaces ready to go for September. So at the moment, it's an interesting building to be teaching in, and I appreciate the patience of our teachers and students. And it's an interesting building to be working in because I know Robin's office has not seen daylight for a couple weeks because the windows have been removed. There's plywood up while they're waiting to come through and install the windows. So the contractors are doing their best to go and put glazing into those openings. The downside is we as a building committee haven't seen a fully fleshed out, trimmed out, waterproofed everything window to go and say, okay, great, now let's just see it done again and again and again. But hopefully Monday we'll get to a place where everybody's much happier than they were last week. I don't know if that summarized it well, Rich.
Yeah, that works.
Okay. And Dr. Carpenter, superintendent's report.
Okay, a couple recognitions. Earlier this week, Monomoy was asked to present at the DESE Spring 2026 Federal Grants Conference in Marlboro. during a review of Monomoy's title programming earlier this year, representatives from DESE were impressed with our district's family engagement strategies and invited Robin, Joy, and myself to speak at the session on a topic alongside with Lynn Public Schools. The session was well-attended, interactive, and it was a pleasure to share the good work we're doing. It was also very interesting to, I think a lot of the conversation, from the other districts was sort of like, how did you get a Joy? Everybody wanted more joy in their districts. Sort of, how did you get a Joy? What does Joy do? For your schools? And it was interesting that, that Lynn Public, sort of acknowledged, and had as part of their action plan on increasing family engagement, having a Joy for next year. So that was part of their presentation, and they were glad to kind of hear what we are doing and how we bring joy to the schools. No pun intended, fully intended. So it was, hopefully Miss Jordan, who doesn't even want to turn around to acknowledge that I'm talking about her, here's the joy that she brought to that conference. I also want to acknowledge the following student athletes that were recognized as Cape and Islands All-Stars this spring, and I apologize in advance for all of the names that I'm going to butcher. For baseball, we had Lincoln Sanford, Tyler Layton, and Joey Ventura. For softball, Lexi Toten, Kylie Mon, Willow Layton, Kinsey Lister, Kate Hughes, and girls lacrosse, Abrielle Long, Tessa Grodziski, and Natalie Sims. Boys lacrosse, Emmett Giorgio. Sorry.
Giorgio.
I know. You think I try to mark it up and phonetically spell it out, and then I still mess it up. Isaiah Friedman, Nick Garneau, Shay Vazdaskis, and Harry Beaumont. Boys tennis, Roman Pavlichenko, Patrick McMahon, Ethan Seifert, and Thomas Hereford. Girls tennis, Darcy Addison, Ella Cutter, Hannah-Day Rezik, Madison Malfoz, and sailing, Madeline Horrigan, and Lainey Hill. Boys track, John Sagis, Sean Needham, Quinn Muldoon, Patrick Jordan, and Alec Brown. Girls track, Zadea Thomas, Vavara Conley, Lucy Cortese, Alexa Ford. Girls golf, Ava Larocco, Gianna Larocco, Lexi Good, Lizzie Cronin, and Georgia Story. And then just to kind of do a quick wrap-up of convocation. So convocation happened Thursday night before graduation, where scholarships were given out and awards to our seniors. We had 71 seniors were there that evening getting an award or scholarship. I think it's been really amazing to just watch the support for the scholarships in this district blossom over the time that I've been here. I know, a few years ago, I was sort of impressed when it went over $250,000, but this year there was nearly $600,000 in scholarships that were given out, and to see some of the students' faces when they hear how much support the community has rallied behind them to support their higher education dreams, it was pretty amazing. And graduation went well. Very pleased that Mother Nature was, allowed us to go and have an outside graduation. I was quite surprised by how cold it got once the sun went down, but it was nice to be outside, and it was a good evening all around.
I was there, Stephen was there, and the graduation was just magnificent. It was also great to be able to see 3 former members of the school committee just from a month ago that Jackie and Mary and Betsy have their children graduate. That was, tears in their eyes said it all. Okay, we have taken all the votes for tonight. We have presented the warrants. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
All those in favor of adjourning and going home?
Aye.
All right. I don't think there's anybody opposed. Good night, Chatham and Harwich. We finish at, it's 8:50? 8:50.